Hi everyone, welcome to the very first episode of The Rise of the Reluctant Psychic. I'm your host Clare Cusack, and today we're diving into a question I know a lot of you have been curious about. What is a reluctant psychic? It's a term that might sound a little strange at first, but trust me, it resonates with so many people. Especially if you've ever had those moments where you just know something, but you're not ready to admit it, or you just brush it off. Maybe you've had flashes of insight, strong gut feelings, or a sense that something is about to happen, but instead of trusting it, you doubt it or explain it away. So what does it really mean to be a reluctant psychic? Well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's someone who experiences intuitive or psychic insights but hesitates to embrace them. Maybe you worry that accepting these abilities will change your life in ways you're not ready for. Maybe you've been taught that this kind of thing just isn't real, or maybe you just don't know where to start. But here's the thing, having intuitive abilities doesn't mean you have to predict the future with absolute certainty or suddenly take on the title psychic. It's not about being special or gifted, it's about recognizing that we all have intuition and we all have the ability to tune into the deeper layers of reality. And yet so many of us resist it. But what if I told you that being a reluctant psychic is actually more common than you think? You are not alone in this. In today's episode, we're going to explore some of the key signs that you might be a reluctant psychic and why so many people resist their own intuition. I'll be sharing a bit about my own journey, how I resisted my abilities for years, and what finally led me to accept and trust them. And I won't be doing this alone. Today I have a special guest joining me, someone who's here to ask the big questions to get to the heart of the topic. So let's dive straight in with Clare's quickfire round. I'd love to introduce you to the lovely Julie Rains.
Thanks so much, Claire. I'm so excited to be here with you. And obviously, this topic is so interesting. And I know it's one that many people struggle with.
Great, thank you. Well, let's dive in.
So then, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
What does it mean to be a reluctant psychic? Is it even possible to be a psychic but still resist it? Why you, Claire? Why were you a reluctant psychic?
So many questions. Okay, thank you. So I was a reluctant psychic because I had absolutely no context with which to understand what psychic really was and what that meant in my life. I think that we all have a cluster of images that come to mind when we hear the word psychic, and I certainly didn't want to identify with somebody with a crystal ball or a shawl or all of the things that we imagine that almost kind of scary word to mean. And I'm using precisely that word in this because in the concept of the reluctant psychic and in this podcast, because I want to demystify it. I think the word psychic is really an umbrella term. It encompasses everything from a gut feeling, a sense of being sensitive to something, all the way up to psychic. So we've got like an empath spectrum, if you like, where we've got being sensitive at one end and being very, very quote finger psychic at the other, and I want to explore what all of that means and how we can move the dial in our lives away from simply just being sensitive to things to actually using information that we gather with our other senses in useful ways in our day-to-day life.
So when you're encountering people who are saying to you they are reluctant to acknowledge, call it intuition, call it whatever you like, where do you think that's coming from?
I would say it's coming from fear. It's coming from we don't learn about it at school. It's coming from being encouraged always to adhere to the hallowed logic that people talk about, like we have to make a logical decision, and we're missing a huge wealth of information that comes from our feeling sense, our knowing sense, our wisdom, our intuition, and we may make decisions that we think we should make rather than decisions that we feel are right.
So would you say it's a fear of losing control and being misunderstood in essence?
Well, I think sometimes it's a fear of what people might think if we can't justify a decision with logic.
Very true.
Right, I know for this, I'm going to do this, and well, why are you going to do that? Well, that doesn't sound very sensible. Like we kind of live in a world where we have to justify on the basis of agreed concepts of logic and being sensible. If we say, well, I just feel this is the right thing for me, and it takes courage to do that. And I think I would encourage people to really listen to their felt sense. and step away from what they think they should be doing or who they think they should be into a whole new version, a whole exploration of who they feel themselves to be.
Okay, so moving forward with that, I know that people have many, many questions. So I'm terming this Claire's quick fire round. So I am now going to bombard you with questions that I think most people will be asking, particularly when they first begin to use their intuition.
Okay.
So do you think society embraces intuition?
No.
Well, there's a thing.
I don't think it's embraced. I think it's been, I would say, marginalised, almost demonised and stamped out. There's a mockery around people who go to psychics. And the fact that people go to a psychic rather than connecting in with their own intuition, that's a thing. And even if people go to a psychic, that's deemed ridiculed. So, no, I don't think society embraces it. And I think it's time for that to change.
And what would you say were the most common signs that someone might be a reluctant psychic without even realising it?
You might get for example, you might get an intuition about something and then you ignore it. And then you think, oh, if only I'd listened to myself. And I think we're not encouraged to listen to that knowing. We think, oh no, where's that come from? It's a random thought. In my day-to-day, I'm going with my logical assessment of the situation and I'm not going to listen to that random thought. And then that random thought chews at our brain, because if we'd actually made that choice or done what that thought suggested, then things would have worked out in a way, and we can see it would have been perhaps preferable to have listened. So the next time we get that random thought, the reluctant psychic, I would encourage them to listen to that thought and act on it. And the more we listen and act on it, the more it works. I think the reluctant psychic bit comes in because we get those knowings, we get those thoughts, we get that feeling, and a sense of whether you feel like someone's a good fit or not a good fit, or a job's a good fit or not a good fit, and we ignore it. And that's the reluctance in us, is ignoring it.
And would you say that often people term it, don't they, as their gut reaction?
Yes.
Or a hunch?
Yes.
Which seems to me a lot of people will accept that terminology, a hunch or a gut reaction, rather than it's a knowing or an intuition or a psychic ability.
Yes.
Which they're all the same thing.
And again, this psychic thing is a big umbrella, encompasses all of it. And I just want to bring it all into the fold so that people realise that this is something that can be developed and expanded upon. And in future episodes, we'll be looking at just that, how people can expand upon their intuition. And also, I'm going to be delving more into how I went from being reluctant, as we've talked about today, to really embracing my intuition. And that was a journey that took time. It took kind of understanding the value of being able to interpret these psychic impressions that I was getting and use them not only for myself but to help other people. It's actually when I realised that it was something that could help people that I began to think, well, actually, this is useful, and it could be something that actually has value and benefit. And that's what kind of encouraged me to really start to embrace it. And then that took me to training to do shiatsu, which took me to exploring what it meant to be able to pick up on the unseen. Really, I can track it back to being in a shiatsu class and being told by my teacher that I was unwinding meridians with my mind, and that it was working beyond the scope of what they were teaching. And I had no idea what that meant. I thought I was just pausing between working on meridians, but the teacher could sense that I was doing more than even I was conscious of. And that's when I started to get really interested. Like, in this setting, I'm working beyond the scope, and someone's recognizing that I'm doing something beyond the scope of what I am consciously aware of. And that's what got me interested in exploring it further. And I'll go into that in more detail in future episodes. So I just want to say, Julie, thank you so much for being with us today, and look forward to seeing you again.
It was great fun.
Yeah, thank you. That's it for today's episode of The Rise of the Reluctant Psychic. If something resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Tag me on Instagram at Clare Cusack _the Life Healer, and let's keep the conversation going. Want to go deeper? Get exclusive content, bonus episodes, and guided meditations over on Patreon at patreon.com/Clare Cusack. And if you want to know what are the 5 signs that the universe is trying to wake you up, then head over to my website www.clarecusack.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review. It really helps more people find the show. Until next time, trust yourself, trust your path, and keep rising, one reluctant psychic at a time.